Schaudt is our keynote speaker. He is the project director for the Center for Automated Vehicle Systems at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, VTTI. For VTTI, Schaudt plans, coordinates, and manages the programs for all automated vehicles initiatives. And prior to this role at VTTI, he was the president and chief experience officer of the marketing firm Post-Launch in Las Vegas, Nevada. Before that, Schaudt was the director of usability services at the MedStar Institute for Innovation in Washington, D.C. He is a devoted human experience enthusiast. He has spent his career learning about the intricacies of human behavior and how best to apply these findings to improve the design of products. And the title of the presentation he will bring to us today is The Good, the Bad, and the Automated. And it's about how human experience design is the key for the future adoption or dismissal of automation in our everyday lives. Welcome, Andy.
Well, thanks for the invitation today. I'm glad to be here. Let's do another round of applause for all the other speakers today, too. So I do a lot of talks around a lot of different areas. Mostly it's about automated vehicles and medical device usability. But it's usually not preaching to the choir. I don't know if you have that phrase here, but there's a lot of usability user experience people in this room, and I knew that was coming into this. So I tried to think back a little bit and try to come up with an approach where I wasn't just telling you everything you already know. And so I took a step back and thought specifically about automated vehicles and automation. And automation is tricky when you're trying to apply all the things that we've used for the last 20, 30 years from usability and user experience perspective. So I thought I'd use it kind of as a use case, but I think you'll quickly kind of see how it can be applied to a lot of elements as technology advances and kind of moves forward. This is a phrase that I've used a lot in presentations when dealing with medical device usability. There's some, I guess, controversy about where the quote actually came from and people adding into it. But I think it really rings true. Every system is designed to achieve exactly the results it gets. And that pretty much rings true when you think about every kind of system that you design. Ultimately, there's some talks about blaming, and usually if something goes wrong, you're going to blame some external factor. We're very good at blame storming, I guess. But you can't blame a lot of these elements on the person. And in the States, especially for the FDA and the medical side, they've kind of gotten rid of the term user error and just stuck with use error. And the idea here is that it's not the person's fault, it's the fact that they couldn't interact with it appropriately. So it's adopting a new mindset is that you have a responsibility to design for certain user groups, for certain people, for certain humans. And really the system is designed to achieve exactly the results it gets. But it gets a little trickier when you're not really designing for somebody to interact with something. And I think that's where we're going to get into a little bit of a quirky aspect today when we talk about automation. So I'm going to go over usability today to kind of set the foundation, and then can usability keep up with the acceleration of technology that we're seeing in our industry. Then I'm going to jump into the bad and good with regards to designing around automated vehicles, and then talk about what I think is more of a new mindset for usability tomorrow and in the future. So I'll kind of keep this thread going through. If I didn't give you this overview slide, it might look like I'm just throwing slides at you for the next 30 minutes. So hopefully this gives you a little context of where I'm going. So somebody else brought up in a presentation today, sorry I don't remember everybody's names, but they brought up the fact that we use a lot of different terms, and sometimes we don't even speak the same language. But all of us here, we use so many different terms interchangeably, and if there's any kind of, I would say, surface level controversy in our space, it's the fact that we use a lot of different terms and approaches for things, sometimes interchangeably. So usability, user experience design, and there's some people in here who probably want to arm wrestle on the fact that those are very different from each other. User interface, of course, you constantly see UX is not UI. Human factors, that's kind of the area that I grew up through my education. Human-centered design, design thinking, which in my opinion is basically changing a lot of the names of user-centered design and giving it something new, sexy, and fun to get people's attention, and it kind of took Storm. Designing for empathy and those elements, I think, are important. Design thinking is starting to bring in some more elements of entrepreneurship, which I think is great. There's interaction design, you have human-computer interaction, human-machine interaction, and then towards the end of the day, someone brought up user-centered design. And it's kind of funny when you look at all these terms. In reality, what we're all trying to do is just make systems better, design them better for people. And that's what I kind of want to talk about as the next elements, is that it's about the mindset of doing the right thing for people. And when they interact with a system or technology or tool, we talk about tasks, the physical structure, digital structures, whatever it might be. So just for us to geek out even more, because we all need jobs and need to come up with things, we start coming up with all sorts of new elements to make this even more complex. You know, the true scientists and researchers in this. So we start creating heuristics and principles, and we have things gridded out differently. We've got Venn diagrams, because now we're dropping science in there. Now we have to do a pie chart, just break things out into different elements. Let's use some symbols to really get people's attention so they can relate to it. There's all sorts of elements, word clouds, and we were just constantly adding more elements and doing more and more work with this, because we're all trying to get people to understand the importance of designing for the user, and as early as they can in the process. So basically, we all have great minds, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're the pushers of UX and usability out there in the world. Basically, it's getting a little bit crazy though, because with the acceleration and growth in technology, things are happening really fast. People are adopting the just build it and we'll adjust it on the fly, and we'll be able to do things faster. It's the entrepreneurial mindset, fail fast, fail forward. The problem with that is that they're leaving a lot of us in the dust when we're trying to apply this early on in the process. So we're constantly just basically putting out fires with design rather than really instilling it from that step zero. It was brought up today, the discovery phase of user experience. So I kind of feel like it's our job to make sure that that stays at the foundation of all design if we can. Because it's going to be very difficult to catch up with this curve if we're constantly picking little battles to try to show the value in the full product design process. So try to keep up. And I think the only way we can really do this is start to really change the mindset of design and bring this in from the very beginning and into the culture of whatever company, university, center, wherever the element is that you're kind of doing this work. This is something, at least in the medical space, that really started to hit home when we started pushing this. Is the fact that the further you get along the design and development cycle for your product, the cost of design changes becomes significant. And so if you're, especially if there's some regulatory aspect to it, so if you're in the health and medical side, at least in the US, where you're being regulated by the FDA to apply human factors and usability into this, and you wait towards the end and you find a significant issue, you kind of have to go back to the drawing board, and basically the opportunity cost there, excuse me, is huge. So it's not just about the fact that we don't want to have to go back, it's going to take time. There's some significant cost to this. So trying to instill the culture in an organization or company or research arm, it's not sometimes the best way to get their attention is to show them how much it's going to cost them in the long term. Don't focus on those quarterly profits and things that you're trying to get through to move along in the development cycle. Sometimes it's just about math will help some of them out to figure this out. Another big thing that's happening out there in our industry, and I can't always speak outside of the US with regards to industry, but I'm making some big assumptions here that customer experience is really starting to drive a lot that's going on in the industry. And there's rising customer expectations, organizational velocity, tons of data out there. People are collecting significant amounts of data with no idea of how they're supposed to use it. But it's all being driven towards the customer, the customer, the customer. You see this with Zappos. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Zappos, but they're basically an online shoe company. And Tony Hsieh started this company, and he's about as significant of an engineer, geek, non-emotional kind of person that you'll ever meet. He likes to build robots and work in warehouses and stuff, but he started this company based on the sole element that people were frustrated with doing things online and purchasing. They're very frustrated with any customer experience service. So he created a whole company just based on that experience. He hires people in and trains them for a week about instilling this culture in them. And then at the end of the week from all that training, he tries to give you thousands of dollars in cash to not take the job. And everybody ends up keeping the job and not taking thousands of dollars in cash after going through the training program. Because they're instilling that we want you to work here, we want you to thrive on trying to make that customer experience good. So Tony Hsieh and Zappos was valued at $1 or $2 billion at some point. That's how fast they grew. And Amazon wanted them very badly. And it took Amazon, I don't know how many years, to finally get Tony to bend, but they bought him for a couple $1 billion, but he got to run Zappos just how he wanted still. So he got the best of both worlds. But after they bought Zappos, Amazon came out with Amazon Prime. And I don't know if you guys leverage Amazon Prime just like we do in the United States. It's basically like our religion now. You can get anything you want in like 1 to 2 days. And that's like, of course, the American dream. Just gobble up, purchase, consume everything you possibly can, and get it to your doorstep. But this is an old graph. This is just showing the increased Amazon Prime memberships rolling up because it's what customers want. Things faster, they can return it very quickly, and it's all based on this customer experience. And that's where everything's going with the convenience of Uber, convenience of Lyft, all of these elements. And so customer experience is starting to drive our industry in a certain way. At lunch we talked about this, about mental models. So a big thing in human factors and usability is trying to make sure that the person or the segment or user group you're designing for has a mental model of what's going on. If they have a mental model of what's going on, they're going to be able to understand and use this product a little bit easier, or at least into it a little bit more on the interface faster. The problem is automated vehicles are really new to everybody. So who here has ridden in an automated vehicle? Okay. Who here has ridden in a car with cruise control? Right. So you've all ridden in an automated vehicle, right? It's ridiculous that we don't even know the right terms for this yet. But the media's hyping it up, talking about there's going to be automated vehicles outside your door every day, they're going to be flooding into the cities. Automated vehicles are in the systems, we've had these. We've been automating elements of the drive for the last 20 years. Really what a self-driving car or fully autonomous car is just a bunch of these systems working in harmony so that you don't have to do anything anymore. And we're not completely there yet. But we don't even have the ability to talk about this. And we're all educated in this room and we still mess this up. Clearly I tricked you because I knew you were going to answer it that way. But it's still going on even with scientists, even in the documentation that like Carlos and I work on for these ISO standards that are international. We've got 12 to 18 countries writing stuff and we're throwing these terms around all over the place and we're all thinking they mean the same thing, but they don't. So, can the general public accurately form a mental model of how autonomous vehicles work? Do we really think they can do that? I don't know if it's the same in Europe, but in the US, we have this thing where the left lane is the fast lane. Now, do you guys traditionally use that here? Well, we cannot get these people to get out of that left lane. It's absurd, like there's signs everywhere, you teach it in driver's education, doesn't matter, I guess you just can't fix stupid in America. Like people will not get out of that left lane because it's the fast lane. So how do we expect to even start describing different levels of automation? Mirrors. 90% of people aim their mirrors wrong in the US. They create blind spots because that's how they're taught, that's how their mom teaches them, that's how they just continue forward. I spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars of the government's money looking at mirrors and camera video imaging systems and things to get rid of these blind spots, all because people can't just bend their mirrors out just like 5 or 6 degrees more. And it's just something with us, we have this inability to really take on even the simplest of things. One of the most dangerous types of environments we have, which is driving. So how are we supposed to give somebody a mental model of how an autonomous vehicle works? For a self-driving car, or an automated car, automated driving systems, pick whatever you want to say and how to call these. They've got sensor suites, they've got ultrasonics, LiDARs, radars, camera video imaging systems, machine vision. They've got all these elements in there, and to be honest, I work on these every day. And every time we get a new vehicle coming in and we're building one, I don't know how it works either, because they change it so much. Then you got the brain inside this thing that's running on more computers than even 6 fighter jets have run their systems. So can we really expect people to understand them, or do we need them to at all? And I think that's when this element is coming in, is that this is kind of like a representation of maybe what an automated vehicle is saying, even in a simplistic format for us. Do we need to let people know that this is what's going on with the car? Let alone the operational environment issues. We were just talking about that over in the simulator. You get tunnels and bridges over the top that kind of ruin your GPS coverage. You get traffic circles, which AVs are great finding their way in, but they can't find their way out. Again, I'm going to keep clowning on all of us Americans. Americans can't find their way out of these either. So maybe that's a bad example. You guys are laughing at it. Snow, lane lines are missing. Tunnels, pop-up work zones. These have trouble seeing the barrels because it's not made out of metal. So now they're having to redesign the barrels. Is a human going to be able to know when the human should be a little bit more attentive in case the AV needs to turn over control? Campuses. So at Virginia Tech, there's basically 32,000 students that are just walking around the streets, and they don't look for cars. They just walk everywhere. It's like a mob out there. And so, yeah, you don't want to drive on campus because it'd be faster to crawl, than it is to try to drive through campus during the day. But they're not looking. So, how does the AV drive on a university versus not a university? And does it change? And if it does the human need to know to be ready? So, I thought the whole point of automation is to help remove complexity from our everyday lives. That's a big element of this, right? Help with our work, our performance. So let's get into some of the bad stuff with automated vehicles right now as we kind of enter this space. And keep in mind, all of the media is pushing this out to everybody out there, saying over here, coming down that anything wrong goes, it's all over the media. Wired, Ars Technica, and Washington Post, it's just everywhere. A big issue that we're dealing with now is the transfer of control for these lower levels of automation. So it's working just fine until it's not working right, and then it needs to turn over control to you. But what if you decided to put the seat back and take a little nap? How's it going to know how long it's going to take you to wake up, figure out what's going on, and then take over control of the vehicle in a safe manner? If you're going 110 kilometers an hour, I just did that math, that's right, I can do that, 150 miles an hour. And it takes you 20 to 30 seconds to kind of get back up and figure out what's going on. You just drove half a mile or even further with a car that is not doing well. It's basically afraid of something. And how on earth did that AV know a half a mile ahead that there was an issue? This is a big problem for us, and probably the biggest one that most of us are working on. This other element is, if this is the case and we want to provide these quasi-automated vehicles at lower levels, we're going to have a really reliable driver monitoring system to know the state of the driver. That's not easy. You can look at some eye gaze and some fatigue monitoring systems. They're not all fantastic. Sometimes they work well in certain light conditions when somebody's not wearing their sunglasses or something like that. But to have it reliable, we can't rely on that right now. So should we be doing it to begin with? So these are some tough usability design issues we're dealing with right now. What about when the fact is that you take a human out of that front seat and the AV is driving along and you have pedestrians or other cars no longer being able to see or interact with a human? And this happens all the time in the States. I don't know about here, but they're waving people across, crosswalks, come to a four-way stop. You go ahead this time. They're waving across, there's eye contact happening. So what happens when you remove that element from the scene completely? All these hand gestures that we use all the time, sometimes good, sometimes bad. There's still communication, they're still part of our everyday lives. Some of them are not helpful at all, except to release a little tension. But a lot of this is happening in instances that we don't think about. So I mean, people walking across the street, school zones. If you look up and you don't see anybody in that front car, maybe you hesitate. Now you're going to stop the flow, and you're changing the ecosystem from what we're used to, and that could have unintended consequences with it. So just implementing automated driving throws some funky twists in there. What if there is a person, but it's in the passenger seat, not the driver's seat, and it comes up and stops? And then the person in the passenger seat who's not controlling the vehicle waves the pedestrian across because they feel like they're in control or something. The pedestrian walks out in front, but the car is moving still because it's not like it's tapped into your brain. These are elements that we're dealing with all the time as we design because we think it's a good idea. But these little quirky elements of human behavior are throwing some curveballs at us during this process. Next thing is just standard interface design for vehicles. We spent a lot of time dumbing things down because of distraction issues. It's not really stopping humans from being distracted with all of our smartphones. But when we get into this new area with, we can provide all this information on self-driving, like show what the LiDAR is seeing, you can see these radars, we can make trees of different colors, we can show all the different cars. Do we need that? So a big portion of what we're doing now is evaluating all these displays and trying to use proper usability heuristics like minimalist design and some of these elements to see what the right resolution of information is on these. Because you can make them pretty complex. And if you're not driving, why do you need all this display work anyway, right? It's going to turn into an entertainment fest inside these vehicles unless we don't want that to happen. So maybe it's something like this. Like, is all this information necessary to display as you're riding along? Is it necessary to display if it's going to turn the control over to you? What about if it's fully autonomous? There's not even a steering wheel in it. What, if anything, do you want to display in there? Well, maybe you want people to trust the system. They're not going to trust it if they don't have a mental model, are they? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on their experience, I guess, and what kind of person they are. If they're a tech-savvy millennial versus an older generation or senior citizen. So I think there's three big barriers. They're evolutionary kind of barriers to autonomous vehicle deployment. It takes a long time for AV systems to get out there. Manual driving is fun. In the States, 5% of our vehicles are still manual, and sold right off the dealerships. But a big one is risk perception. This one is the biggest issue, at least in the States. I haven't seen a lot of survey data recently from Europe, but the only generation that we're seeing, or user segment, or rider segment, is the millennial tech-savvy group that's actually increasing its excitement about being able to ride in a fully autonomous vehicle. Everybody else, their anxiety is increasing. Upwards of like 70% say they would never. What are they basing this on? Clearly they're basing it on the same thing many of us are, that they don't understand it because they haven't ridden one yet. So they're fearful of it. But it switches if you ask them, what about riding in a car that has level 2 or level 3 automation? And then it kind of switches over and 60% or so said, I'd be interested in that. So now you've got most of the general population is okay getting in the most dangerous situation, which is the middle levels of automation. But if it was fully autonomous, they don't want anything to do with it. Like, that's the reverse of what we want. And like I talked about before, it's not like we're going to be able to easily educate them into this. So to me, what that means is their first experience with these have to be very good. elegant for them to be able to adopt and appreciate this. So we've got kind of a big step ahead for us. I like this slide because it kind of shows you the whole spectrum of perception. You got some people hovering on the wheel, trying it out. Maybe I'm okay with this, but I'm still not going to blink at all for like the next hour. Have some of that good Portuguese coffee to keep attentive and vigilant. Then you got this guy who's like, you know what, I'm pretty cool with this. I'll read a book, slide my seat back a little bit. I'm going to stay up here, but I'm getting used to this. It's not bad. Then you get down here and you actually turn the seat around. You decide to have coffee or take a conference call, and you know you're feeling really good about it. Then there's like the utopian future where you buy that car, they give you these big fat turtlenecks, and get all comfy, and you lay down there with your spouse and hold hands and get driven off to the beach somewhere or whatever the case is. Really what we are is a roller coaster ride. You've got people that are freaking out. You've got people that are okay with it. Some people love it, but it's all over the place right now. And it's just like we were talking about at lunch too, with the different types of users, different tales. Everybody drives. Everybody uses transportation in some form or fashion. How are we going to design all this so that everybody can use it and have a good experience with it? And if we don't, and some people aren't accepting of it, is it going to be deployed and accepted widely? And a big driving factor towards this is that 1.25 million people die across the globe in traffic accidents. And we know 90% of that is due to human contributed error. Us doing something or having some use error occur, which means if we can take us out of the loop, this is pretty heroic. We can save a lot of lives. So if we don't design the automation to be elegant and well understood and a good experience the first time, people aren't going to adopt it, which means they'll disuse it, which means they're right back into the risk areas where we don't want them to be. If they don't have a good mental model of it, what they can do is misuse it. And I'll show you some examples of that. So, poor understanding and poor design of using automation leads to trust issues, misuse, and or disuse. And all these elements can be dangerous towards the adoption. Here is video's unavailable. Must be because I'm in Europe or something. I don't know. Okay. Well, this is the person sleeping behind a Tesla. They're just driving and stop and go traffic, just zonked out. And there's quite a few videos of these. You can YouTube them yourself. They're finding workarounds. A Tesla has a torque sensor in the steering wheel, so it's not that you touch it with your fingertips, but you have to give it a little feedback. So it knows that every 30 seconds or so you're touching a wheel that you're attentive. Well, they just take a water bottle that's half full, tape it on the steering wheel so it provides a little slosh, and they just took the level 2 automation vehicle and moved it to a level 3, just like that. Not a good idea, right? But if they don't understand really what's going on and that this thing can't handle all situations, and the term autopilot probably isn't the greatest thing either to provide to certain people, but they're going to misuse it, and that can lead to safety issues too. So this kind of brings me back to, let's look at heuristics again. Some of the foundational principles that we use for usability. If there's anything we've been able to teach people, it's some of these things with heuristics. Help in documentation, consistency in standards, visibility of system state, match between system and world, minimalist design, use users' language, users in control. Doesn't work too well with automation. That's the whole point, right? Prevent errors, informative feedback, flexibility and efficiency, good error messages, reversible actions, minimize memory load, clear closure. To me, these are all great, and we use them in all sorts of elements when we're doing design. Some of these don't necessarily take hold when we start talking about automation. And so that is a new level of complexity that we need to think through. So here's some things that we can do and we're trying to do, or at least focusing on right now, is that we want to, a lot of car companies are saying we want to remove transfer of control issue completely. We're just going to wait until we're at fully autonomous self-driving cars, level 4 and 5, before we put these on the roadway. And really, that's just taking the steering wheel out and saying, we no longer need this issue. The human isn't in the loop. The human is not a driver anymore, they're a rider. So that's kind of an element, is the challenge is that they're all racing to be first to market. But they know that safety is a big issue, and they can't be doing this willy-nilly and putting people in danger. Some of them are still researching level 3, and we're helping them, but this element of the human in that loop is definitely a dangerous factor. When we talk about the external communication, I'll show you a quick video of this study we did with Ford, where we hit a driver in a seat suit, put him in Washington, D.C., and basically freaked everybody out. I was looking at behavior around this vehicle in D.C. We drove it 16 hours a day in all sorts of different situations. We were looking at how people were going to react around an alien environment. And what we were doing is implementing for half of those miles, we were putting in external communication signals. So basically, think of new turn signals for automated vehicles, but they're going to communicate with people about what intent. So now the robot is just saying, I'm not telling you what to do, I'm just trying to tell you a little bit about what I'm trying to do. And seeing if that's going to help bridge that gap when we no longer have that human-to-human communication going on. Hopefully this one works.
Ron, who are you? What are you doing?
7 days in, reporters are chasing us down, running red lights. Couldn't get 30 days. Thanks a lot, NBC. So we're not the only one researching this. There's research going on here looking at car to pedestrian interactions and activity in VR. There's places in France, there's places in Israel, all over the States. Everybody's in this. Carlos and I are on some task forces and leading them around this space and trying to figure out what we can do. And we're leveraging some of these usability heuristics as the baseline. First thing is that we use symbols and icons, and I saw those come up a lot today. Symbols are actually really bad at recognizing symbols. As much as we think they're great, we've done research on this in all the icons and symbols in transportation, and even the best ones are 50 to 55% accurate in recognition by people. That's not good when you're sick, especially if it's something that's critical. When you look at language, maybe trying to provide some language or words or something on this, not everybody speaks and reads every language, like myself. I have no idea what you guys are talking about speaking Portuguese. So if you had some signals up there that were some kind of communication that was using words, you're going to lose out on the population. So what we're trying to do is use minimalist design, some patterns that are distinguishable from each other, but you can learn what they mean within just a couple exposures. And that's the best that we can do in this space if we want to combine these signals across at least countries, if not globally. And why would you want that? You can imagine pulling up at an intersection and seeing 15 cars all with different external communication signals going off. It kind of looks like Las Vegas. That's not going to help out pedestrians on the street. So we're trying to come up with ways like consistency and standards for this, utilize these heuristics, but provide them in a new way that is going to be helpful rather than distracting. So you remember this? This is just a screenshot of that display I was showing earlier when we look at what you display inside the vehicle. Most of what this would be for, if you're not driving, is what we call situation awareness, right? Just trying to be aware of what's going on. If you do need to take over, are you ready to take over at a moment's notice? If you don't need to, and you're just trying to understand it's your first time in an AV taxi, you get in your automated Uber, you get in, you're looking at the displays, and It's trying to show you that, hey, it's got this. How much information is enough? How much is too much where you don't understand? This is a new article out that Tesla put out, or somebody put out on Tesla. But this is their display. It's showing its intended path, some of the vehicles that are around it, and then it's implementing navigation that you're very familiar with from like Google Maps or Google Navigation. They're not trying to recreate the wheel here and provide everything. Minimalist design, enough for you to know that it sees the cars, it knows where it's going. You watch it by looking out in the real world, and their hope is that that's going to be enough of the information. So this is some of the stuff we're looking at now to try to utilize these usability techniques. So overall, what I want to challenge you all for is that automation comes in a lot of forms. The most clear in our environment right now are the automated vehicles, or autonomous vehicles, or self-driving vehicles, or automated driving systems, whatever you want to call them. But I challenge everyone to kind of elevate your mindset of usability and user experience when it comes to using automation. It's a new Amazon Prime world. Experience is driving everything. And when we talk about automation, we should explore design that requires no interaction or use, if we can. And this was brought up by you earlier, where you brought up the quote that says, design for the invisible, make it transparent. This stuff happens all the time for us, and we don't recognize it, that AC, air conditioning, is invisible for us. It's going on and off when we need it, it's being taken care of, we're no longer interacting with that. So when we get into the AV world, we're starting to apply automation to our software, or with products we use, like you showed, where it was washing things and doing things with the arms. We need to start thinking in a new way. What I would argue is that this is more human experience design. It's that you're designing to improve a human's experience, but they may not be interacting with it. And this is kind of a new area. Same with a pedestrian walking down the street. They may never use an automated vehicle, but they're in the environment with them. They have friends and family that are walking across the street in front of them. How do we design for a non-user? Especially with something that's so ubiquitous as transportation. So I would say that it's a new field in this area of human experience design. It doesn't always have to be designed for somebody to interact. It's really about providing a better ecosystem and elegant design for certain things. So when you look at these heuristics with automated vehicles, you can take a few out right away that may not be as relevant anymore. And we all know that not all heuristics, you can't apply them to all designs all the time. But in this field, in this area, some people in our space are trying to force in everything that we've used across all product design with UX and usability and human factors, and they don't all fit. It's time to kind of take the next step and understand that experience is driving our world now. And we need to be ready to change our approach, and I think that starts with mindset. So here's an example of the new Tesla Model X. When you just start walking up to it, the door just opens. I think the old Teslas, or the old models, the handle would come out, but you still had to interact with it. Now, it's just nice and seamless. You walk up to it, it opens. When you get in, you can just touch a button, or you can just grab the handle and it's going to automatically shut for you. These little types of things are what are providing people a good experience, and why Tesla doesn't have to do any marketing. I don't know if you realize that, but Tesla does no marketing. They do no sales, they do no commercials. Everybody knows about it. And it's their element of design that's actually taking them to this next level valuation. They're valued more than Ford. Tesla sells 25,000 cars a year. Ford sells like 250,000 a month. And now Tesla's valued at more than that. How is that possible? It's all the things that they're doing differently based on experience, trying to transform the industry, bringing attention to it because that's what everybody's interested in. So I would say keep that in mind in everything you do moving forward. And I appreciate your time. It's great being here, and I can't wait to chat with you guys after this. Thank you. Any questions for me?
I wonder why. about automated vehicles is not working at the same time about streets and cities.
So, I'm not sure if you heard her, but she's basically asking, as much research is going on about automated vehicles, why aren't we applying this type of research to our cities and our streets and the infrastructure? In the States, we've had a lot of hype around smart cities, and there's money being poured into it, and no progress is made. The reason why I think, and that's all that matters right now, is what I think, is that cities are run by municipalities, groups of people with very small budgets to do anything. The Virginia Department of Transportation, I present to a lot of their districts, and they say, we're building roads that have to last 20 years, and AVs are changing like every 3 months. What's like 1 or 2 things we can do now to kind of get the infrastructure ready for AVs? And I tell them, just keep the lane lines painted. And they're like, oh, we don't have enough time or budget to do that. Municipalities are very much the same way, is that, at least where we are, they don't have budgets to really put in infrastructure and do things. There are a lot of processes that try to do that. But what they usually rely on is acquiring contract services to do certain things, like to help them with data, to process things, to provide mobile apps for them to do what they need. But those are all being done in silos, and it's not being done together. Interoperability is just being avoided because nobody wants to sit at the table together. Connected vehicle, so we did about 10, 15 years of connected vehicle and connected infrastructure work. We've got roads completely outfitted in Northern Virginia, like miles and miles of highways and rural roads. All of our 6 miles of test tracks are outfitted. And it got to a rulemaking point, and then our administration changed. Trump came in, no regulation, it's just sitting there. We know it works. There's like $30 radios you put in all these cars, and they can start communicating with each other, communicating with the infrastructure, creating better traffic flow, but we still can't get it across the table because of regulatory rules. The reason why this is taking off so much is because these are multi-billion-dollar private companies. They're the only ones that have the budgets and the willingness to go after it and do it, and so that's why it's jump shift up to where this is the attention right now instead of the cities. And that's again just in the US. I'm guessing the governmental structure is going to be different in each country in Europe, or maybe not. You know, maybe Europe could do it. The European Union get together and do something. Maybe they are. But in the States, it's really driven by the people with the big pockets, and that's why AVs are getting a lot of hype. Yep.
I'm gonna try to pick on the last question and throw a hard curveball and see if it's.
I'll just walk out if I want.
So you mentioned that, and we know that that's true. A lot of companies and car manufacturers are already looking into level 4 and 5 of automation as a way of stepping out of the really difficult problems and challenges, which is the intermediate levels where the driver still has to pay attention to the road, might be able to interfere, might need to interfere, and so on. But as you can see, this will not be possible without huge investment in infrastructures, namely. And it's not the car companies that will be driving that. It's the states, it's the municipalities. So we will need to change all our landscape in terms of infrastructures until a level 4 or 5 means of transportation becomes possible. So, if my question is if the manufacturers lock down this type of research only specific to the 4 or 5, and we will not see a product coming out in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, how will that change the public perception? Because the history of technology development is full of promising stuff, that after 10 years, if you don't deliver something that really changes, just starts to fade out.
So the best example that we try to give people in this space is getting to level 5 automation or even level 4 is that automated vehicles can't see through a building, right? They're coming up on a blind corner and a car's coming through, they can't see around the building. So connected vehicle, connected infrastructure information, sending data wirelessly to each other would take care of that. And you need that for some of these tough issues of seeing around things that you just line of sight can't help you with. So they know that, but they're still focusing on getting these things to work in a certain operational design domain for as much as they can by itself. I think part of it's out of fear of cybersecurity and encryption, but one of the elements is they're starting to ask these questions. So if anybody wanted to put together a consulting firm right now that would go to municipalities and start working with the general public on getting things like softening it to get ready for these companies to come in, I'm pretty sure you could make a ton of money. Because the Fords, the Chevy, the GMs, they don't do this. They don't sell to municipalities very often. They sell fleets of vehicles to police and this, but they don't go in and have communication with the general public about getting them ready for deploying 500 taxis in their city. So they're trying to figure out how to do that. They're starting to throw research funding at that now. I've got a little to explore that, but I keep having to pause the funding because they say they're going to deploy the vehicles and then they don't, just like you said. So it's a constant, get ready, get excited, just kidding, it's not going to happen this year. So that's another one of these things, this is an evolution. I don't think it's going to be transformative at all. It's going to be evolutionary. It's going to just take a long time for this to happen. You're going to find one zip code in one city that's been completely scanned and prepped and ready. They're going to go and plan it out. It's going to be there. But if it snows, they're not going to have the cars out there, right? So it's going to be very small little pockets of these to begin with. And they're going to be learning as they do these deployments with the general public and pivoting along the way. But they don't know. They don't speak general public language. So if anybody wants to throw together a consulting company and do that, I think they'd probably do pretty well. Go into like in Atlanta ahead of time, 6 months, talk to people, do clinics, show them the vehicles, have social media surveying going on to understand how things are changing over time. I think it's going to be a big area for them, but they don't do it now. They haven't, but they will need to.
Do you believe that in the near future there will be personal automated drone vehicles for people?
So, flying taxis?
Flying taxis and flying...
I sure hope so. Man, I'm a flying taxi. So, we had NASA visit ETI a year and a half ago, and then they came again 3 months ago. And when they were here, we were opening up a new test track where you had a big kind of flat circle, like a cul-de-sac. And they were like, oh, that'd be great for us to do testing with our VTOLs. I'm like, what's a vertical takeoff and landing vehicle? And I was like, you mean flying vehicles? And they're like, yeah. So you have those? They're like, yeah, they're not hard to make. We have some, and we're testing them now. And like, why aren't we seeing flying taxis around? And again, it's the regulatory and legislation issue is that the FAA in the US controls all the airspace above like 500 feet or something. And then from like 100 feet to 400 feet, it's unregulated. And that would mean that the states would have to do something with regards to the states can't even paint the lane lines. You think they're going to go and take care of flying taxis going all over the place? So it's not a technology issue. It's more of how do they implement it. And it truly would have to be fully autonomous because you can't have me, even though I love to fly it myself, you can't have me like taking off and flying around. It would have to just have fully autonomous, take you in a virtual three-dimensional lane and then take you somewhere else and drop you off. I told them I would want that headline though. I said within 3 years, Virginia Tech and NASA team up on flying taxis. I was like, Like, I don't care if you just bring the taxi and have it take off and land again. Newspaper. But I give a presentation to people who are unfamiliar with the space, and I show them an example of like a senator having that taxi service that will just take off if the traffic got too bad, flying where he needs to go. And I guess it's not that complicated. The technology and the vehicles are there. It's more of how they would ever deploy them in some kind of legal and protected environment. No more parking lots. They'd have landing lots, I guess, and takeoff lots. So I think they're going to wait until the ride sharing stuff is up and running to where they're getting into parking lots, so you never have to park. It drops you off and takes off, and then maybe they'll start using those parking lots as deployments.
And another last question, because I'm curious about this research. It's just about money, or do you think that it would be possible to develop this kind of technology, thinking on non-city, non-populated, low-density places?
So, in the States, rural roads are the majority of roadways. A lot of people live in suburbia and rural areas. It started with highways because it's the easiest to do. That's why most of the AVs and stuff have been in this continuous stream. Very rarely is it just going to come to a stop. Not a lot of curves and hills. That's why it started with highways. The reason they're concentrating on urban now is that it's lower speed. And that's where all the people are that are spending money in taxi services there, and that's where they can disrupt first. But we recently just purchased 500 acres of land, and on 120 acres of it, we're building a rural road test track because we're anticipating that these companies are going to need to start deploying them AVs on rural roads. The problem is most of the rural roads are designed not to a DOT specification. They're old, they have potholes, they don't have lane lines, they don't have shoulders, they're different pavement colors. If they do have lane lines, they're crossing over each other. There's hills, blind curves. It's a mess to make AVs work the way they work now. So that's why they're leaving it for last, is that they have less area to disrupt with regards to a business model, and also it's the hardest part to do right now. The hardest part to do right now is predicting humans and pedestrians. So humans standing there in the corner, looking at their phones doing this, is the same movement that they would do if they just stepped out in front of the car. So right now, AVs are, what's the toughest part is to predict that. Not that we're great at predicting it either, but if an AV was set to safety mode, it would just be slamming on the brakes at like every intersection. So that's the toughest thing they're working on right now, is that predictability of human behavior. But the next thing would be the rural roadway, and we're anticipating that'll happen. That's why we're building the road. I'm hoping it'll be faster than 5 years so that we can start making some money on using that new road. But I think it'll happen because people will want to move further out of the city. Because if you can move further out, your commute would be longer, but if you're riding in an AV, you can be working, playing on your phone, have an espresso taxi to take you in, have conference calls. You'd be more than happy to, because you're not commuting and driving anymore. So more people would move out to those rural areas.
So probably with this, because cities already are equipped with public transportation and other technology, which
Again, in the public transportation thing is, you'd think that that's the electric transportation, automated things of that nature would get started first, but it's municipalities with no budgets, so they're really waiting on the private industry to get this technology up and elegant before they start adopting it for their own public transportation systems. So I think we'll see a mixed mode of traffic and all this, but most of it's hinging on the private car companies and tech companies really getting this together. And for the first time ever, you see these car companies, they're announcing partnerships all the time. They never did that. All of their systems that they have in these cars, they're having tier 1 suppliers build for them. You know, Bosch, I think that's the name on the simulator you have over there, Boscher. I mean, Bosch has built a lot of systems for most of these car companies for years, but they never claimed it as a Bosch system. But now, it's like the new coolest thing to announce all the partnerships that you have, because it shows how transdisciplinary you are, how focused you are on innovation, and So I think it's just a change on how this is all working, is that partnerships are going to be the cool thing. And, you know, Ford just announced partnership with Washington, D.C. on deploying vehicles in there. So they're starting to get into that, like, model of let's start teaming up in towns and cities and make sure that we have a footprint there. And maybe that's where all the relationships will start. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. Great talk. So I'm not a millennial, but I'm tech savvy. So you have those three problems. You know, it's fun to drive. It's risky and you don't know. So I keep thinking about listening to you. And my question is kind of actually to regulation. On risk perception, thinking about aviation, you know, they have to get the user experience right because if planes crash, so it's all about trust. You know, are you going to trust each other on this or not? And it doesn't seem to be straightforward. The question is there any regulatory pressure to do equivalent solutions as they are in aviation, in the sense you have to be able, when there's a crash, you have to be able to trust each other. What happened? The authorities went in and they checked everything, and it turns out that something else could happen, or nothing could be done, or we find the flaw like in aviation. And I don't see this discussion. Is there any pressure towards this? Yeah, more regulation on top of all regulation.
So it is, the discussions happen at least in the U.S.
It's just how unfair it is that one single crash by a car was world news.
Yeah.
It rocked the world.
So the Arizona River crash.
People kill each other every single day.
49 people died in the U.S. that same day by being hit by a car.
Portugal is a menace. It was like civil war. Some years, 10 years, 15 years ago, civil war. 1,000 people would die in a single week. But we have to trust this. To be honest, I don't trust. So I'm not a millennial. I do not trust this. I want to trust. But
So the thing is that this is another one of these human behavior things. Humans are really bad at involuntary risk perception. So if you take any audience, like even if you guys, I would say, how much safer is flying than driving? When you tabulate it all up, it always comes out to be about 2 times safer. But in reality, flying is 1,000 to 2,000 times safer, depending on the country, because of the commercial air fatalities is so tiny per miles traveled. So we get on an airplane and we're like, I can't control this thing, so I guess I'll just fly now, and hope they know what they're doing up front. We don't understand it, but we've gotten used to it, so we know it's safer, but not that much safer. We're still afraid of it. If we use the airline element as a risk perception thing, that means in the States, we have to go from 37,000 fatalities a year down to 37 before people would trust it like flying an airplane, saying that it's twice as safe as normal driving. That's not going to happen. Just plain and simple. We're going to have mixed mode traffic for a long time. That means motorcycles, people drive their BMWs because they like to drive it. They're going to be on the roads. We're going to have crashes and fatalities. And the ground is much more of a complex system than the air. So can we ever do it? Do we have to get it to a commercial airline level of safety before people will trust it? The only element that gives me hope on this is that we all know what driving is like. Not all of us know what flying a plane is like. So that element of disconnect might help us compromise, but even if we went to the 10% level or something, you still have 370 fatalities a year. It's still nowhere near what it's going to be. So yeah, we're really bad at risk perception and understanding things. The regulatory industry they just don't build things. That's not their role. And they don't understand the space well enough yet to just start handing out regulations. The biggest element to it is that it's no longer certifying a vehicle, the body. It's also got to figure out how to certify a brain. And machine learning and artificial intelligence changes. So if I certify this BMW AV, and then I say, okay, go out there, and it's learning and changing how it behaves, I can't continuously monitor it. If I can, then that means I have to know what's going on in its decision-making algorithms. And I don't think the car companies will be giving that up anytime soon, the AI. So the reason regulatory stuff hasn't been pushing and going faster is that they don't know how to deal with the body-brain issue with regulation. And so we're talking about it, we're researching it, but it's just like normal government work. It's going to be real slow.
the question was, is there any pressure, for example, for a black box, that everyone has to be forced to, if there's a crash, there's guarantees that there's information on who's in them.
So all the car companies are going to be liable. There's no more individual liability anymore. No car insurance. They're going to be liable for it. So they're going to black box these things. They're going to have all the data. They're going to want to show that it wasn't the vehicle's fault or if it was another vehicle.
So that's good pressure.
Yeah, they know it. They know going into this that they're flipping the insurance and liability transportation thing upside down. And they're going to have to cover all of it. They get in a crash, it's going to be millions of dollars. And so they're incentivized to make this thing work well. Yeah. Yeah. Final question.
It's not like a question, but more what for you. My idea is with that system, we need more driving license because it's not driving license. So it's for everyone, including the elderly people that can't do register anymore. Okay, so that's.
Yeah.
I just want to understand if they want even drive the car like I want, part one.
Yeah, you take control. It's that transfer of control. Should you have a driverless car license and a driver's license? Should you be licensed specially to drive these cars that can turn it over to you, which means you have to have a good mental model of what it can do? That question's out there. Nobody knows the answer right now. If there is no ability to interact with it, like a senior citizen or designing for the disabled, if there's no steering wheel, they're just driving it.
And all that, they don't need a chauffeur.
Right, they can only to release it, but they don't have to have a license with the insurance on it or anything like that. That's the dream, I guess. Now, whether they can meet that, I don't know. And personal vehicles aren't going to be the fastest deployed thing. They're going to be doing these as taxis to make their most revenue they can off these expensive vehicles. So imagine an electric AV that's running 16 hours a day, picking up people, it's running 1,000 miles a day. You're going to wear that car out a lot faster, but if you're going to get revenue on it constantly, be able to pay off its sticker price, which is going to be pretty hefty. Until we get the cost down, we're not going to see a lot of personal owned AVs that are at the high level, as much as we're going to see the taxis out there, or workhorses, or transporting goods, or trucks. Those are going to be what we see first.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.